The presenting sponsor of Moontower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moontower Soccer. This week, we will review Austin's scoreless draw on the road in Seattle. We're going to preview the St. Louis City match at home this weekend. We're going to be joined by Apple TV's Max Bretos for that, and then we'll cover a few other pieces of Austin FC news. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and Landon, do you have plans for South by Southwest?
Well, I do now, Jeremiah, because...
Oh, well, what would that be?
Moontower Soccer is going to be appearing as a panelist at South by Southwest. We're going to be on Sportico's podcast stage. That's going to be Monday, March 11th at 3:30 p.m. We don't have the exact location yet, but it seems like it's going to be in or around the convention center. So if you have a South by Southwest badge and are looking for some soccer content, we're going to be there on Monday, so come find us. But we'll be posting more details onto social media stuff as we get those. But yeah, that's a week from today, so it'll happen before our next show.
Yeah, it should be fun. And I was just reading the website. So it's Stefan Diggs from the Bills, Apollo Anton Ono, 8-time Olympic medalist, Kendrick Perkins, Steven Jackson, Rachel Nichols. Somehow our names did not make it onto the list of enlightened celebrity individuals that would appear on that show. But this did maybe I think a couple questions for you. Like, so when you're a musician, did you ever like dream of playing South by Southwest? Wait, and did you ever have the chance to play South by Southwest on the music part of it?
No, I mean, I would have loved to have played South by Southwest. I never did. The kinds of bands I was playing in at like the highest level I ever played at were not quite the kind of band you would expect to see at a South by Southwest. And so I don't know that we ever even thought about it. Yeah, we never did it.
We never did it. And then my other question for you as a musician is, like I mentioned to you when we saw some of the places where the stage might be, it kind of reminded me of the Spinal Tap where they had the puppet show and Spinal Tap performance. And I guess as a musician, like do y'all all love This Is Spinal Tap, or do you like, is it too close to the truth? Or
no,
I loved it as a fan.
I love it because it's so close to the truth. It's so funny. And like I've not seen that movie in a long time, and you sent me that clip. And one part that made me laugh really hard was in the crowd as they're like doing their free jazz set or whatever. There's just a guy sitting down in the front row with his head in his hands and just a thumbs down, just statically held out in front of his face. We did play, not quite like opening for a puppet show, but I've played some embarrassing shows before, including one where I wish I could remember. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say the name of this band. They're actually kind of famous now, but it was kind of before they were famous. They are an Austin band, came through Lubbock. We opened for them. We played to them and like 3 of my friends, and then they played to our band, and there was literally nobody else in the venue. And so that was tough. I would have killed to be opening for a puppet show at that point.
Okay, so speaking of guys sitting in the front row with their thumbs down, Austin played to a 0-0 draw in Seattle. Like, this is a great transition. In Seattle this last week away. So it's still early, but Austin sits 11 in the Western Conference after 2 games. So I don't think that anybody was super thrilled or excited by the way that game turned out. But I guess my big question is, objectively, is a 0-0 draw on the road at Seattle good or bad for Austin?
I mean, it's good. Like, it has, you have to call it good, right? It's a draw result, in right? Seattle without watching the game. If you're looking at the box score afterwards and the table afterwards, you got a point in Seattle. That's a good thing. That's about all the positives we can take from it. I have a few other positives that I think we can discuss here in a little bit, but yeah, even in a game where there's not many positives, a point is always a good thing. In a season where we're kind of waiting for the summer to come for reinforcements, and kind of the bigger signings that are going to happen this year seems like they're going to happen in the summer. Any point we can get before that point is a good point. And so one in Seattle is especially good.
So, yeah, but I mean, this is very true. But the numbers, I just really quickly kind of go through the numbers because they are really bad. They were all really bad. So possessions 57-43 Seattle. Shots are 23-2 Seattle. This is from FOTMob because I feel like they vary depending upon the source. XG, I've never seen an XG this low, and I feel like people were talking about this on social media today. Austin's XG was 0.04 for the game. And I know we don't love XG, but I feel like in this match, that was
sounds about right.
It sounds about right. That's exactly what I was thinking. It sounds about right for Austin. Yeah. So, again, like, God bless the result, but not a lot of positive things offensively coming out of this.
Yeah. So I think if we're going to take some positives, one of those is that Diego Rubio is fit enough to start this game, which was a thing I was frankly not expecting to see. And we talked about last week how there's a reason why he's not starting. That it's not because Wolf doesn't like him or whatever. Like, Wolf talks pretty highly of him and seemed to want to start him. And I had people coming at me acting like I didn't want Rubio to start based on what I said on last week's show. Is that the sense that you got from me, Jeremiah?
Well, this is not an all caps moment. This is just a self-defense moment.
Well, yeah.
No, I didn't.
Medium caps. But I feel like I essentially prayed on the microphone for Diego Rubio to be fit enough to start in the next game, but that he might not be, and we need to be okay with that was my main point.
Yeah, that's what I took out of it, that you didn't think he would be, but you hoped he would be. That's what I got out of the match.
And so we saw him, and he was able to go 66 minutes, which that in itself is a win to me. The fact that he can go that long, maybe this next week he can go 70 or 80 minutes, and then eventually he can go a full 90. But that's a positive. Jader Obrian also gets the start. Didn't think he was all that good in the game, but having fit options is always a good thing. The rest of the attack, it didn't seem to change much. Like those guys added a little bit different, but the end result was still almost nothing generated in the attacking third.
Almost nothing is in 0 shots in the first half. The first shot came 74 minutes in. I watched did you see the Alistair McAllister highlight video today, which is basically opening kick, final result, which I felt like was really indicative of that. And then I just, before we started recording, watched the MLS highlight video, the 7-minute or whatever clip. And I think a free kick from Austin may have been the only offensive highlight that was in the video that the league put out from.
I think
from
Rigoni's shot very late made it in.
Oh, okay. I stopped watching at that point. There was a bug in the house and I had to chase off. So
did not test the keeper at all. So not much of a highlight, but I think one of the shots on target. So they felt like they had to put it in there.
Put it in there, yeah. So I think it leaves Austin with 11 shots in 2 matches, I believe. Like it was 9 last one, and when this one 1 goal in 2 matches, which we can't extrapolate a whole season out of that, but would be really historically low. Which I think maybe transitions into the next thing I wanted to talk about. Like, where's the hope in this attack that things will change at any point before the summer? Like, is it Driussi, or are we relying too much on one man? And maybe it's not even Driussi, but there have to be additions during the summer.
Yeah, talent-wise, we definitely need Driussi, and I don't think he fixes the team on his own. He's not going to come back and we're all of a sudden world beaters, but he will make us a lot better and give us at least the possibility of something good happening in certain moments. I think what this also highlights is that we don't have any other players that even play the same kind of position as him. And so you see him out the first game. You see Owen Wolf kind of taking on the role that Driussi plays. In this game in Seattle, it's Danny Pereira kind of playing that same role. And I think the language is a little bit confusing here because Austin play the way what Josh Wolf calls them are tens, but he calls them like both of these guys are tens to me. The where I would distinguish those two is you'll have a lone six, which in the first game was Alex Ring, the second game was Johan Valencia. And then one of those quote tens will drop back and help in the build up a bit more. The other one will stay a bit more forward. And then you see their defensive responsibilities as well. One of them will often be a bit further forward. And that's I think that's where you distinguish that role is like this is the Seba Driussi role and this is the other one. Danny Pereira was playing that Driussi role, and he's still not out like the out and out lone 10 roaming around and picking up the ball and pulling the strings and everything. But you're still expected to kind of do some of that stuff. And we saw in the first game that Owen Wolf couldn't really do it. We saw in the second game that Danny Pereira can't really do that. And this is a thing that we've heard people say over the last few years is that we want Danny to play further forward. But I think that we've said on the show, there's only so far you can push him forward before he kind of gets out of his wheelhouse and loses some of that spark. And I think that happened in this game. Like when he got the ball going forward, he was like pretty predictable and not very dynamic with what he decided to do. If he's going to play that far forward, he needs to find a way to bring that magic up the field with him because he is magic when he has the ball deeper and is progressing the ball. That's where he's really strong. And so I think when you put him too far forward, it just doesn't work. And that's what we saw in this game.
Well, and I want to talk about that. I think this is a Kevin Morris response to maybe a quote from Josh Wolf. And Josh talked about this maybe being like Danny's best role. Like, do we think that it's that Danny's like not going to play the six at any point in time going forward? And this is what they're going to expect out of him? Or like, is there more flexibility? Or are we like taking that out of context? Because if it's something that becomes just a like, are we going to play Danny or Driussi healthy in this spot? Like, there's not a lot of minutes for Danny in that environment.
Yeah, this is part of why I wanted to bring up the language thing because Wolf will call both of those guys 10. And so I don't think it necessarily means like he's going to play further up and there's going to be the other 10 is the guy dropping deeper. I think you'll probably still see Danny playing in that other 10 role where he is dropping deeper and helping in the build-up a bit more. But, I mean, in this current lineup, like, I thought Johan Valencia was one of the best players on the field, for Austin anyway. Like, he was maybe Austin's best player on the night. And I think he made the MLS...
he did. MLS team of the match day or whatever they call it.
Which we know, like, they usually go off of, like, FOTMob scores, essentially, to pick that team. I don't actually necessarily believe that it's always the best team, but he did have a good night. Going forward, like, if you're going to drop one of the guys that was on the field tonight, it's not Johan Valencia. And so let's say Driussi is healthy and you have to drop one of these midfielders. Like, I think out of these three, it has to be Ring or Danny Pereira. And I thought Ring had a bad night too, which is maybe lucky for Danny. But I think it gets hard to fit all of these guys into the midfield when they don't always quite fit together all that well.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this when we were just talking about the midfield in general in the preseason. They're all talented in certain ways and defective in certain ways, and they're like not complementary to each other. And so there's like not a perfect. It's like this guy here, this guy here, this guy here, and like Austin's as good as they can be. The other thing that we picked up this week was we mentioned last week Will Bruin talking about Austin sort of having a soft mentality. He was on Sound at Heart this week and connecting sort of like to what Driussi means to this team and doubling down and saying he had a couple beers and maybe he wasn't like precise with his words. He backed up some of what we've talked about. So why don't you like share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was really curious about after that little tweet thread was he said he thinks Josh Wolf is a good coach, but this team has a weak mentality. And my question for him would have been like, what makes that? Like, where do you get that strong mentality? Is it characteristics of players? Is it coaching staff? Like, how do you do it? And he went on in this interview to say, like, it is essentially something you can't plan for. Like, it is within certain players to kind of bring that, or within groups of players, and that you can't really decide to instill that. And mention players like Ozzy Alonso, who was just a beast on the field, man. And Bruin said, if I'm playing bad, I feel like indebted to Ozzy for playing a bad game. And Austin doesn't really have that. It's like guys would look to Driussi to create. And so I think he said that, like, Driussi is a guy who leads by example, but when he's not there, it seems like everybody's just kind of looking around at each other. And that rings very true from what we've seen in these two games.
Yeah, no doubt. And that hopefully gives us some, I don't know, man. I don't know if I feel better about him coming back and what it might be, but I guess it definitely shows how Austin needs to wait until the summer and hopefully hit big in order for there to be meaningful changes in this result in attack. So maybe let's take a break. Let's get into one this maybe isn't so depressing by talking about the defensive side of things, and just like cover a few more player notes.
Sounds good. Hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moontower Soccer.
When no one is around.
Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education, and they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts, and check them out online.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law.
Moontower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. And this week, they're giving away 2 tickets to the upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we are back. We're going to talk more about the away draw in Seattle. Jeremiah, let's talk a little bit about some of the pregame storylines. So some of those are being health issues. Driussi did not dress again, so not even an option off the bench. We got confirmation in the midweek press conference that Leo Väisänen is going to be out at least a month, maybe up to 2 months. So bad news there.
Oh, and then we got weird non-injury.
Right, Brendan Hines-Ike was scratched.
Yeah.
Wolf said after the game that it was personal issues, so hopefully that is something that won't keep him out this next weekend as well. And hopefully everything is okay with him and his family. But did not travel to Seattle. And so Austin ended up calling up a few reinforcements.
Yes. And as a longtime Sal Mazzaferro lover, I was very happy to see him called up and very disappointed to see that he got called up, but it was not one of the players that made the match day 20. So it was Mazzaferro, Antonio Gomez, and Val Noel, who both did make the game day 20, correct?
That's right.
He called up from FC2. Just it's one of these MLS-ish kind of things. So per the rules, a club may sign a player on this kind of deal for 4 short-term agreements each season. They can be included in 4 league season matches roster each season, but they cannot appear in more than 2 matches. So like we've burned one of the 4 rosters, but none of the appearances.
Correct. And I believe even the one for Mazzaferro is burned, even though he did not make the match day roster. That the way I read the rules anyway.
Yeah, same. That's the way I read the roster too.
And I saw some people maybe a little concerned about that. I mean, if we're to the point where we're having to call up these guys that often, hopefully you would be able to use a year in a season-ending injury thing and actually sign someone. But if you're having to call up this many guys that many times and actually use them, I think you would just sign someone. So I'm not too concerned about using up all of our short-term loans here. I thought it was interesting that Gomez made the bench over Mazzafero, though.
I think it's supposed to be the most instructive thing. I was going to say the season's completely off the rails if we have to worry about that much.
Yeah.
Just that much, right? And it's just like, are we competing for the wooden spoon or not? And that's all we have going for us. So hopefully we have other bigger, more promising things to worry about. But yeah, I think the most instructive thing was who made it onto the game day 20 and who didn't.
So the rest of the lineup, we saw Brad Stuver, which I didn't quite clock this. His 100th match in an Austin uniform. Is that right?
Yeah. So he's 100. Yes, all-time appearance leader, which I guess, given his durability, is not surprising. But he was the first Austin FC player to log 100 matches. There's some others in the 90s that I meant to look up, but I will not try to do that off the top of my head.
And then the back line was Kolmanich at left back, Hedges and Cascante at center back, Gallagher at right back. Midfield was Johan Valencia as the lone 6, and then Alex Ring, kind of, as we mentioned earlier, playing that deeper 10, Danny Pereira playing the more further forward 10, and then we had Rigoni on the left wing, Diego Rubio getting the start at striker, and then Jader Obrian on the right wing. Going through kind of like player performances here, Obrian like had the speed and enthusiasm was there, but the precision wasn't. He had some really poor first touches, some passes that went just straight to the other team several times. And going through all these players, the conditions were not great, right? And you saw it on. I'm not saying that as an excuse for Austin, because Seattle looked pretty sloppy for a lot of the first half as well. Apparently the pitch at Lumen, is it still called Lumen Field?
It is. And it was like, what, brand new, I think? Is that what
Brand
it was?
new turf. And apparently there's like a lot of those like little rubber bits. There's a lot of those up at the top, and it takes a bit for it to kind of settle in. It was also in the 40s or 30s and raining for bits of the game. So it did not seem like the most comfortable setting to be playing in. And that looked pretty apparent from some of the players. But yeah, Obrian didn't have a great game. I thought John Gallagher looked fairly poor for most of the game. He seemed to be having trouble with that turf and slipped several times. And I mean, Leo Chu is a very quick, shifty winger, and so he's tough to keep up with in the best of conditions. But Gallagher seemed to be struggling, keeping up with him a lot of it. And like Gallagher is one of those on the hammer to scalpel sliding scale. He definitely leans hammer. And so in these moments where he needs to have that precision and with these like sloppy conditions, he doesn't always excel in those moments, which I think is probably why he kind of saw his ceiling playing as an attacker and moved back into the defense. But definitely not an all-star performance from John Gallagher.
Well, are you worried at all? Because this is if one is to be believes the coach for the first match, like this is 2 underwhelming performances in a row from John Gallagher. Do you become worried about one of the most consistent players for Austin over the first 3 seasons? Is it just? I mean, 2 games is a very small sample set, but like, is there anything that you read into the performance he's had over these first couple matches?
I mean, it's a little discouraging, but I think and not saying this is going to happen, but if they can get the offense to start ticking a little bit more, I think you put John Gallagher in more positions where he can be more useful. But I also, with Mikel Dessler being rumored to be coming in the summer, that makes me slightly less nervous as well, because from what we've seen of him playing in France, like Dessler's a starter as soon as he gets
He's pretty
here.
good. Yeah, that's true. That's true too. Yeah. So,
and when you have that, like John Gallagher is a phenomenal backup right back to have, right? Or
right, and it
possibly
can play on both sides.
Starting left back too. Yeah.
Yeah, it can play on both sides, and probably honestly, like if you look, depending on how. So I guess depending upon, because Guillermo Biru, I felt like had a pretty good match too. You know, again, not a lot of minutes, but I think we talked about this last week. Seems like a guy that maybe can make a difference. And one of the things I'm excited about is when these guys come in from like South America or whatever, like we don't really know anything, right? Like you've watched what 4 minutes of Wisecap videos and everybody saw like a YouTube highlight, but whether they're going to adjust to the league or fit in or whatever, nobody really knows. But I felt like he was pretty solid, also in the limited minutes that he had.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Viru was more impressive this outing than he was in the first game. I'll be very excited once he's fit enough to go 60 or 70 and get a start. Because I think just what little we saw was good, and so I'd be really interested to see what he can do with a bit longer run. I thought another highlight was Matt Hedges.
I did too. I was going to say let's talk about the defense in general because I feel like that was a highlight.
Yeah, a strong game from Cascante. I know you can say like overall defensively, like letting that many shots go is not. It's not positive, but like center backs are rarely the people who cause those scenarios to happen, and they're the ones asked to clean it up. And I thought they both did quite well in that regard. Hedges looked like the guy I hoped he would be whenever we signed him. That like, okay, he's not going to be the best defender in the league anymore. But watching him earlier in the season at Toronto, he looked like one of the best players on that team. And if we can get most of that guy in this team, like that's a positive. And I think we saw him. So hopefully he can keep that up. Cascante had a decent outing. Hopefully he can keep that up. And then if Brendan Hines-Ike is back in the match day 20 again, it's a little less urgent of a position at that point.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really showed in the highlight video I talked about a little bit earlier, that showed up in the shots versus shots on target is Austin had 9 blocked shots. So I feel like the center backs, while there were shots, a lot of times they were like in the right place to get a foot or to break the play up or whatever. And particularly Hedges, I think, was really strong on that. And then we mentioned this earlier, but like Johan Valencia playing, I saw this I think suggested online somewhere. Like so this could be getting another formational thing. Like, was he a 5? Was he like a true destroyer a true destroyer defensive midfielder? Is that what you saw to Valencia?
Yeah, I mean, he was playing a bit more, and I think that's partially tactical game plan and then partially Austin just getting pinned down so deep that he was staying back there. But they seemed to be defending in more of a like 4-3-3, which is a thing we don't often see. Like you almost always see someone drop back in and you'll have 2 central midfielders in the defensive shape. Oftentimes Austin would still stay in that like 4-1-2-3 shape defending. And so that leans into that a bit more, that like, yeah, Valencia is like staying deep. He is a defensive midfielder. That's what his job is today. And I thought he showed himself pretty well.
Well, I don't know who else you wanted to talk about. I have the Emilio Rigoni note that just says worthless, which I felt like what I got out of him. And
yeah,
I coming into this season held out some hope, I think more than you, that he would develop into the player that we wanted him to be. And now, I do not see that to be. I don't see how that happens. And there's I think there's minutes he has to consume because Austin doesn't have a lot of other options. Leave me disappointed. And who was the guy that signed with Charlotte who was allegedly connected or is signing with Charlotte that was allegedly connected to Austin?
Yeah, Leo Abada, an Israeli player who was playing in Scotland I don't want to get into the politics of all this, but for political and personal reasons, felt like he needed to leave there. And that everyone kind of seemed like on the same page with that. I don't know how legitimate this was. Austin's name was brought up in an article out of Scotland, I believe. I think it was Austin and Atlanta, two MLS teams that were linked with him. And so that led to speculation that, like, okay, Burrell said a few weeks ago that we have one player signed already. We read that as Mikkel Dessler, and another one that we're close to. We didn't know who that was. This Abada story comes out, and we start thinking, okay, maybe it's him. Now I'm really hoping that the one that they were close
somebody
to
else
wasn't him, because it looks Bogert's reporting that he's going to Charlotte now. So hopefully that the one that Burrell was mentioning is still in the works and that they didn't just lose out on him.
Yeah, and the way it ties back to Rigoni for me is somebody mentioned that, well, this guy's kind of expensive because he costs like 8 to 10 million, and that's not very far off from what Austin paid Rigoni. And you think about production and just how much wasted actual money and cap money like can't be gotten back from that transaction.
Opportunity cost, right?
Yeah, the opportunity cost is really hard for Austin. Who else was notable in their performance?
I'll say a few words about Diego Rubio. I thought it was like a welcome change in the approach as far as how he plays versus how Zardes plays. You saw a few moments where they would split lines into Rubio's feet, and he would try to play that first time chipped ball in behind to Obrian. I don't know that it ever actually came off, but it's a thing that like you wouldn't expect to see Zardes even try or even maybe get to that first ball even. And so I liked that, but he's going to need more service and more support to really make a difference. And so I don't think we can fairly judge Rubio on this one because I don't remember him doing anything poorly necessarily. He just wasn't really given opportunities to do anything good.
That's not yes. But that's also a very Austin attacking performance. I do have one apology that we wanted to make, which is not in the player part, but somebody, I think we talked about Owen Wolf being good at Legos, which apparently is not a thing. So I did a lot of research on what the plural of Lego is, and there's really not any because Lego is an adjective, and you can have a Lego brick or a Lego set.
Oh,
but you do not just have a Lego. So Owen Wolf was really good at Lego bricks or Lego sets, but not good at Legos.
I don't like this. I'm a descriptivist when it comes to language. If this is what people call it and everyone's accepted that this is what it is, then I say they're Legos.
Well, the other part of that I saw was like the uncultured Americans will call them Legos despite the fact that they're not, and I feel like that's very on brand for us. So maybe it's just we're just being ugly Americans.
And I just proved their point.
Exactly, Landon. It's like I don't care what the people of Legos say about it. So I just feel like I wanted to go back to that point before we got away too much from the game.
Anything else on the game before we finish up?
No, let's go ahead and take a break and then preview St. Louis.
All right, sounds good.
Moontower Soccer's premier sponsor is McGuire-Woods Consulting. McGuire-Woods Consulting helps clients in the public affairs space, from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire-Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only advertises on this podcast because it's the home of the two-time reigning Copa Tejas champions, which is the most important trophy in professional sports in the entire world, I'll say. Contact our friends at McGuire-Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them the experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. Each year, Americans pay almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials pay an average of $336 a year in bank fees, which works out to 6 Austin FC game tickets per person per year. You'll pay none of those bank fees with the Amplify Credit Union.
And as we mentioned on the last couple of shows, free parking offer is back at Amplify Credit Union. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to goamplify.com/Moontower. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. All right, we are back, and we are thrilled to be joined by Max Bretos, who is a play-by-play commentator for Apple TV doing MLS Season Pass. Max, thanks so much for joining us again. We had you on, I think, once last year, so always a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time.
Yes, I remember, and I enjoyed it. It's so much. I was thrilled to hear I got invited back. I was waiting with bated breath. I called in. I thought I did a nice job. I go, is Landon and Jeremiah going to bring me back? And here we go. Proof of concept that it was a good show.
Are you a little warmer than you were on Saturday afternoon? Like, I guess how was that RSL match? That was insane to watch.
It wasn't. It was cold, but based on everything else you saw, it wasn't that cold. If it makes, because you were worried about the snow and the lightning, and the wind was bad. I mean, the wind was uncomfortable, but it was cold because of those things. The actual temperature wasn't that cold. So it was just weird. I mean, I got to say, the weather in Utah, I'm mesmerized by it. I've been there a few times. I'm mesmerized by the weather and just the beauty of the place. And then the other thing is how quickly they get the roads cleared. They know what they obviously have to deal with this kind of weather. And by the way, they haven't had weather like this. Because I actually went there to go ski on Sunday I took my son and go, let's go ski. We'll spend an extra day. We got snowed out. And everyone says we haven't had any snow in weeks, and that it all fell Saturday and Sunday. But it was something. But it was cold, but it wasn't debilitating cold based on how it looked.
So we had you on last year. You're the first person from Apple TV that we've had on this season. So kind of wanted to ask you just like, what's different this year? We know there've been some changes in how they're handling y'all's schedule and things like that. So what is different this year for you guys?
Well, I think first and foremost, they don't want it to be too different. I think they want to benefit from the fact that they had a year one, so we can all kind of get a little bit more comfortable, which I think in my situation, I could probably speak on my colleague's situation, Brian Dunseth, we're both in that boat. A lot more hands-on too. We've had a lot of meetings which are exciting about presentation. They've brought in some people to really get us all up to speed, get all that access, whether it's with regards to officiating, whether it's with regards to presentation, and just trying to make this as very uniform, where we're all aligned, where this is a practice where we can have these games where they feel familiar and comfortable for the viewer, whether you're watching a game in Austin or Orlando or where it kind of it is a national, no, what's the word I'm looking for? It is a centralized production where you'd see like in the Premier League or some other leagues where it looks familiar. And I think that's something that they certainly want. And I know when I watch some of the other leagues, when you watch these world feeds, that kind of is a nice blanket when I'm watching these games. So I think there's certainly part of it with that. I think they want to keep things pretty similar as well. But to me, just pick up where we left off of what was an amazing 2023, not just because of the relationship with Apple and what they can do, but obviously the changes with the league, with Messi, with the Leagues Cup and that relationship. There's a lot to be excited about, but we kind of went through it the first time. And now I think going through a second time, we'll know what we expect. Because even the Leagues Cup, we didn't know what to expect. But after it was all said and done, we're like, this is a tournament that has a very high ceiling, and we'll see how that relationship goes on. And now year two, I would imagine it's gonna feel a lot better than year one.
Are they ever gonna let anybody else call a Messi game, Max?
Oh, the Jake and Taylor?
Yeah, I think it literally has been them every time he's been on the TV. Is that right?
I think Steve Cangelosi and Danny Higginbotham called one or two at the end of last season, and I think Keith Costigan and Mo Adu did too. So I think they certainly will. I think, and by and large, because look, Jake and Taylor are our number one team, so they'll get the number one game, which is generally going to be Lionel Messi. But I think there'll be some moments where maybe the number one game is not including Messi, as crazy as that might sound. We'll see how the season plays out. But if Cincinnati plays Columbus, I don't know who Miami's playing that week. That could be the best game. If it's LAFC Galaxy, if it's Portland and the Sounders, I don't want to just point out the rivalry games, but there are some compelling figures in some games. But that said, that's going to be the big dog here. But we're thrilled. I'm thrilled to see it because it just the idea is the high tide raises all boats.
Yeah. So I mean, not to degrade you, Max. So you've got Austin, St. Louis this week. So maybe this is not the most exciting game of the week. And we talked off air before that you're just getting into prep. I think people will be super interested in hearing what does your week look like leading up to the show. Obviously, you're not you don't have all the details of everything that's going to happen on Monday night when we're recording the show. But how do you get ready to go so that you sound great on Saturday?
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Jeremiah. By the way, I think Austin has a lot of clout, regardless of their position. You look at these teams and you look at what visually it will provide, and the storylines, and Austin's up there. Look, I was Austin week 1. I was in Salt Lake. Salt Lake's fantastic to visit. Incredible airport. The city's growing, great places to eat, convenient. You can walk around in the city. I don't know if you could have said that a few years ago, but it's a good destination in the big picture of MLS. And generally, I lean more to the Western Conference because I'm based in LA. So I think it's smart to kind of regionalize everyone a bit. And I think Dunny and I are definitely a West Coast team, which I'm elated about. Granted, I'd love to get out and do some games in an Eastern Conference, which looks really top heavy. But the West is very compelling. So I think Austin, we hope that they do well this season, because that coupled with that stadium, which is out of this world. And before I answer your question, every time I go to that area, because I'll be honest, when I first found out that Austin was going to have a home stadium outside of Austin proper, I was like, oh man. But every time I go there, the growth in that area, and we stay by the Domain, it's awesome. I mean, it's just, it feels like a good secondary part to the city where you can be entertained and have fun, and there's a lot going on. And obviously the anchor there is Q2 Stadium. But
and it's not so far out of the city either, because I live on close to like the far south end of the city, and it takes me 25 minutes to drive to the stadium on game days.
Yeah, it's I found it very convenient, back and forth from the airport. Obviously, the Austin airport is a lovely airport, but with the growth of the city, they probably need a bigger airport. They have to anticipate a bigger airport.
We're working on it, Max. I'm in a lot of Chamber of
latest?
Commerce meetings. It's going to take like a decade, but like just keep coming back. We promise we'll have an airport that's like as big as the city.
Yes, I like the airport as it is, but I just know the city's growing, so you need a bigger airport. That's the way it goes. But I do like the quick out to the Uber or the rental car counter is very nice in Austin. And then you're off. Incredible city, but that's a nice little secondary spot. And I think that shows the growth, where it's not just everything in Austin. You have a lot happening north of the city as well. And who knows what other directions. Austin's just this great growth city overall. But with regards to, we'll call a game on Saturday. Sundays, we'll try and have quasi off day, but a lot of highlights, watching games. If there's a game like this week, Austin and St. Louis. So tonight, my evening plans, I'm here in California. After I get off with you, we have to do a couple things. I'll watch the Austin game, and maybe tomorrow I'll watch the St. Louis game. You do a lot of reading, and you prepare, you make some phone calls. MLS is so well connected. I'll generally call the team that had the Austin or St. Louis and have some questions for them. We're very intertwined with our Spanish broadcast team. And I'll tell you this, I think the Spanish side for MLS is a huge growth opportunity because of, we have good English announcers, but the Spanish announce side is the creme de la creme, from Pablo Ramirez and Sammy Sadovnik to Eduardo Vizcayarat. It's a tremendous stable of broadcast talent. But I think the idea that MLS will get more popular for the Spanish-speaking American audience, for the audience in Mexico, for South America, for a variety of reasons, I think that's where the growth opportunity is, and hopefully the English side grows as well. So I'll make those phone calls by a Tuesday, Wednesday. We usually have a coach-player meeting on Thursday. It's like a Zoom like this. Sometimes we can get into the city, and we can do that from the training facilities, not as frequently as you would like. And then Thursdays you have those calls. Hopefully you get all the information you need, and you just keep on top of it. Fly into the city Friday, have a nice meal somewhere there, get immersed with what's happening locally. Listen to a podcast. When I did Austin week 1, I listened to your podcast. It was very helpful. I would listen to this week, but I'm probably listening to it now, so I don't want to be too repetitive. Although I know it's more than just me talking. And then Saturday, you're there at your hotel. You continue those conversations. You're usually in your hotel watching European soccer in the morning, and then you just get ready for that game. Hopefully, get your lineup cards, smack it all together, and you're off and running. And I will tell you, that week is very fulfilling, and I'm just blessed to be able to do this. I can't believe I can do this for a living, and it's calling a soccer game is the most liberating thing, liberating sport without question, because you get to do the storytelling without much interruption. And then we wrap it up, and I look forward to the next week because of going to a new city or seeing this new stadium. It's always something interesting and exciting lying around the corner.
All right, let's jump into this game coming up. So I know you said you are just starting your heavy research tonight, but you saw Austin last week. You saw quite a bit of St. Louis last year, I'm guessing, and they have some changes in personnel, but as far as their core identity, they seem to be more or less the same team this season. Jeremiah, you have some of the kind of the key ins and outs. Do you want to run through some of those real quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think everybody remembers, but St. Louis is supposed to be really bad last year, and obviously that did not turn out to be that way. So they finished first in the West, lost the first round of the playoffs. Nicholas Gioacchini went back to Italy, was probably the biggest loss. I almost drafted him in the Golden Boot draft we did, Landon, before realizing it's like, how is this guy that scored this many goals still left on the board? And it's because he doesn't play this league anymore. Austin, original but also enemy Jared Stroud, went to DC United. Then we had Nicholas Deer come in from Denmark, although he hasn't played yet, right? I don't think
so.
Yeah, and then Chris Durkin in from DCU, who is a familiar face to people who have
some
followed
savvy moves
under.
Yeah, not the highest profile move, but I like that they're very ingrained into their style and the kind of player they want.
Yeah, I watched their game over the weekend against NYCFC, and they pretty much dominated this one. NYCFC finally started pushing at one point and got some good chances, had some good sequences, but this was St. Louis's game, and Chris Durkin had a good game too. I think they showed at halftime ground covered for both teams, and he was leading that. So he's doing exactly what they want him to do. They've had a busy schedule as of late with CONCACAF Champions Cup, and so Klaus, their normal striker, did not start this game, but Samuel Adeniran came in and had a killer game. So they just look really good top to bottom, and they were kind of firing on all cylinders here. So the way they like to play, I guess, Max, tell us a little bit about how St. Louis likes to play. I think we've seen it enough now that most of our listeners will know, but in your words, how would you describe their game?
Well, you won't hear it first from me, but it's been said a fair amount of times how there's that similarity to the Red Bulls high pressing style, where it's a lot of energy and they will push you to try and force you to make mistakes and see if they can turn that over and create these good opportunities. It's a demanding style of play, and it's not for everyone. And that's what I love about how they select this team, because they have to sell these. I don't know if sell's the right word, but tell them about, this is the way we do it. Are you ready to run yourself to the nub? And, if they're up a goal, then, which they were a lot last season, the system works beautifully. If they find themselves trailing, and then you can kind of change the way you're gonna, since the opponent may not be in such haste to score another goal, and the impetus is on St. Louis, it could be a little different. But that's the big challenge they'll have. But it is high energy, this big press where they will be ready to pounce on, make those mistakes high against, certainly if you're playing out of the back, be able to press you there where they can get into very good scoring opportunities. And they have a group that have a great spirit, which are very, obviously they don't want a lot of the ball. They want to quick strike, get possession, and do something with it with a few amount of touches and find a way to score, whether it's that midfield, whether it's their wide players. João Klaus is a perfect player for that, because he leads that charge. When he was injured, it took a while for him to get back into that form, but I think you see that with St. Louis City there. I enjoy watching it. It's like a cup of coffee when you turn it on, and sometimes they'll throw different formations at you. They could be a 4-4-2. Even last season, you would see it change a lot. It could be a 4-2-3-1 sometimes, where they have a more traditional engine room. But those wide guys, it was Stroud last season, that former Austin player, in Indiana, Vasilev, and now Celio Pompei, who's the kind of guy that will do it. They could do the two forwards. They could play with one forward. Very adaptable team that I think they're misidentified sometimes, because people say it's predictable because you know what you're expecting, but they have a couple wrinkles in the way they play, which has kept it fresh and difficult to unravel at times. So
it's also hard to, it's like you may know it's coming, but it doesn't necessarily make it easy to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And no one likes to play against this across the league. Every time you St. Louis, I'm sure teams are rolling their eyes because they know that it's going to be, it's different than it's a non-traditional way to play it. And you've got to, dot the I's and cross the T's and how you possess and limit mistakes. Because other teams, those mistakes may not cost you at the wrong side of the field. Here against St. Louis, they certainly can. But this is it's intriguing, and it's been, to me, I was curious to see how they would come out year two. Very promising start that this is a system that can continue to work in MLS.
Yeah, and you mentioned the parallels people draw with the Red Bulls. In recent history, the Red Bulls have more often than not been that good of a team. And I think Matt Doyle from Extra Time has frequently described Red Bulls games as a series of car crashes. And this, although the St. Louis team plays that brand of soccer, they have some really classy players in the team too, that when they do get out on the break, when they do get into those moments, they can play the game as well. And I think that's the part that makes them so dangerous, is that they want to get the ball in the attacking half and keep it there as much as possible. So they're not going to pass it around the back too much. They want to get it forward. And if they lose it, they swarm and they punish you and take the ball and then go again. And so that's, if you let them do that,
that's a much better explanation than mine, by the way. Landon, that was very good.
But so
it is madness.
What we saw last year, though, is some teams would start to just give them the ball. Let's say, here, just have it. We're not gonna let you do that to us. You bring it to us. Bring the ball into our half yourself. And that worked. That is also a thing that Austin FC historically, and Josh Wolf in his 3 years, has mostly chosen not to do. He's like, we're going to play with the ball. Want the ball. Yeah. We're going to play it our way. We're going to play on our terms. We're going to be the protagonists. And that's not a thing that has worked against this team. I think I was watching them play on Saturday and thinking, if this Austin team, as impotent as they seem to be at this moment offensively, tries to do that against St. Louis, they're going to get demolished. I'd say this Seattle game.
This is pretty aggressive. Max, I want you to present the counterpoint for why it's not going to be that bad. Maybe.
Well, no, let me finish this point though. The Seattle game, as bad as the game was, gave me a little bit of hope, where Austin did not generate anything offensively, but they stayed pretty disciplined defensively. They still gave up a ton of shots, but only 3 on goal. I think there's probably should have been like 2 to 3 others that should have been on goal that Seattle just kind of biffed, but lots of block shots, lots of compactness whenever Seattle did get into that final third. And then lots of moments where in the past years, you'd have seen Austin with 9-10 guys up in our box, where they stayed a little bit more disciplined and kept some guys deeper for those transition moments. And relatively speaking, it has improved certain parts of this team's defensive play. And so that gave me the slightest bit of hope that Austin might be willing to do something different and actually adapt their game to what St. Louis wants to do.
So it gives you hope that they could approach the game plan with St. Louis City the right way, because of how they played against the Sounders, where they did concede a fair bit. But obviously it's on the road, and Seattle's another team that likes to play with the ball a lot. So there's, styles colliding there. It's tricky. But I don't, to your point, I don't see them at home adjusting back to that. If they did, that would be the big storyline. If I'm calling that game from the beginning and you're seeing Austin kind of roll that ball out and go, all right, St. Louis, see what you got, it would make it very exciting. I just don't see it happening. Yeah. Certainly is when you are playing at home for Austin FC. And look, I was surprised that Austin could get a point at Seattle, because after what we saw in the first game, where Minnesota looked, irresistible, that first 45 minutes for first game of the season, I couldn't believe what I was watching. And you give credit to Minnesota, but you also have to lay some blame at Austin, the way maybe they weren't quite ready. Minnesota winning a lot of 50-50 balls, just pressing at a level, which is not how Minnesota plays, but they did want to press a little bit higher. and it made Austin uncomfortable. So I don't want to bum you out, but I think Austin probably favorite here. They'll start getting wins here, certainly at home. They're good enough to do that, but there's probably some lessons to be learned in both game 1 and game 2 for Austin FC to put into effect. And look, Josh Wolf's a great coach, excellent staff, and some play, a good team. Well, obviously we have to see about Driussi, but figuring some things out, I guess, who's going to be the forward, how O'Brien settles in there. But I think they have the players. They're trying to find out the right combinations where I think they'll get closer to where they want to be as a team, certainly playing at home.
Yeah, Driussi is kind of the big wild card here, right?
I don't think sorry to interrupt you, but when that first game, it looked like a team that wasn't ready to play, kind of looking around, where's Seba?
Yeah.
We can't do anything without him. And they obviously are familiar with not having him.
Yeah, and he didn't even dress against Seattle the other day. Josh Wolf told the media the other day that he is training on his own now. So even if we can get 20, 30 minutes off the bench, I mean, Austin fans will take that.
Yeah, but that doesn't, him saying training on his own doesn't tell you that he's going to be ready on Saturday, but hopefully that they could get 20, 30 minutes. That would be a sweet vision, I'm sure, for you guys covering Austin FC and certainly the fans that come out to Q2.
What else you got, Jeremiah?
Oh, I was I mean, this is not on the field related, but it's like Max, you said hopefully on Friday night you get a chance to get out and get a good meal. Is there a particular, you've been in Austin enough, is there a spot you go or a type of food you seek out, or what are you going to do when you're here?
Well, last time I kind of went, I got in very late and I went to there's like a row of bars and clubs that are down there by the hotel. I forgot.
In the Domain?
The Domain, but it was
probably Rock Rose.
Rock Rose is the name of the street. Yeah.
Right. And there's a taco place. I just went there and I was so hungry and I ate, but I don't know. I have some friends who are in town, so hopefully we can come up with something. I've never been to Franklin's. I always know that that's the place to go. And I can't remember some of the places I have eaten, but I just love being there. I just love walking, going to downtown Austin, the foot traffic. It's so rare sometimes in cities you visit in a downtown area to be able to walk around. I want to go see the bats, but I don't think I'm going to be there early enough.
It's not
the bats under the bridge.
It's just not bat season yet.
Yeah, it's not bat season at the moment. Yeah, come back in the summer and you can see some bats.
Well, I got one Austin game in October last year, and I have 2 in the first 3 weeks. So I'm all right. It sounds all right to me. I mean, obviously you hope to go with Austin playing well, but and this is going to be an exciting team. We'll see what they do in the summer as well, where you have, with Rodolfo Borrell, with all intentions that they're going to make a big splash because they have to. Everyone's getting aggressive, getting players, and Austin is certainly a club with high expectations and ambition.
Yeah, well, we're all patiently waiting for the summer when that happens.
Just buying time.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up our preview here. Max, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate your time and your insight. And hopefully we can get you on again sometime this season.
Oh, would love it, Landon, Jeremiah, and maybe next time, Landon, you'll pull that guitar off and you'll play a few notes for us.
That'd be great. Yeah, thanks, Max.
Thanks, guys.
All right. We want to thank Max Bretos one more time for joining us. Jeremiah, we do have a bit more news to cover, which is we now know the U.S. Open Cup format. So there was the whole back and forth between MLS and U.S. Soccer. MLS didn't want to play their first teams. U.S. Soccer said you have to. And it seems like they've finally come to some type of compromise here, right?
Yeah, I think so. So it's an odd compromise. So the 8 MLS clubs, 8 of the 26 first teams will participate. Eligible teams will participate. Houston Dynamo, top 7 ranked clubs according to Supporter Shield standings. 9 MLS affiliated next pro teams, which include Austin FC2, will also be involved. And I think there's one. Who is it? It's the New England Revolution do not have a second team and would fall in the bracket of teams that would have second team participate. So it's like one fewer MLS clubs participating in any way than is possible. So
is it the Revs or DC?
Oh, maybe it's DC. You're right.
I know DC United they had Loudoun United, who used to be their affiliate, but they like don't own them anymore or something, and so they don't have a second team. But I don't know. I'm not sure about the Revs.
I'm sorry. I get the DC and the Revs confused all the time. DC did not have these stupid throwing the cardboard box over the corner, not into the not into the bay. So they should probably deserve more credit than that. But yes, anyhow, what it means for Austin is that Austin FC 2 will be hosting a first round U.S. Open Cup match on March 19th at Palmer Field at St. David's Performance Center. We kick off set for 8 p.m. I mean, honestly, I hate the way this has all turned out. I'm also honestly super excited about seeing FCito play a U.S. Open Cup match at Palmer Field. That just seems like a good time.
Yeah, I think both of those sentiments are like understandable, right? Like we want the U.S. Open Cup to be taken more seriously, but like if this is what we got, we're gonna like I want Austin FC 2 to do well in this, and so that should be fun. There's going to be a lot of soccer around that weekend, right? I think FCito plays their first game March 15th, which is Friday. Then Austin FC has a home game on Saturday. Is that right?
Yes.
On the 16th, and then we have Open Cup game on the 19th. So there's going to be a lot of home games there.
Yeah, and I hope they go as far as possible, so we can keep seeing like Open Cup matches at Palmer Field, because it's a fun place to watch games. And I guess the thing that I've heard a lot is because of the way this has turned out is there's a lot of MLS fans, and I think some supporters group, at least in St. Louis and maybe in other places, that are like ready to boycott League Cup because of that. Clearly, this seems to be a choice where MLS has gone with like, let's commit our first teams to the thing that we control and not to the thing that we have media rights to. Like, do you? I mean, I don't know if there's any question about. Do you agree with that? Does this make you less interested in Leagues Cup, or does it matter?
I mean, yeah, I think like the groups who decide to boycott those, I think they have grounds to, right? Like if MLS is going to say, like, complain about match fixture congestion and then add this whole other tournament that nobody asked them to do, like you're doing it to yourself, right? And so I understand why they're doing it, but I also understand why a lot of fans are not going to be happy about it.
And those can be we didn't even talk about this too. It's like is a little bit of the same deal with the refs, where I can appreciate that people are upset, and I like in my head am mad about scab refs and not union refs, but also I really love soccer, so I'm just gonna go watch games anyhow and be like dissatisfied and angry at myself about that.
So Austin FC 2's competition is Foro SC, which is a UPSL team out of Dallas, I believe. Is that right?
Yes. And I do not know what 4-0 means. I didn't look it up.
If it's in Spanish, I think it's like the word forum.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
That doesn't make any more sense. That doesn't help.
I'm not going to look it up, but the UPSL is, I'm not sure. They're like third or fourth division. I'm not sure where they fall, but it is oftentimes college players who will play for like amateur for UPSL teams during their college off season so that they can stay fit. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's like whatever college that all these guys play for during their regular season and they go play for 4-0 during their off season. But it's an amateur team. Austin FC 2 should beat them. But again, this is why cups are so great, is should doesn't matter that much. It's whatever happens on the field that night. I guess we have some FACito news. Bobosi Biarwanga, it was announced that he is coming back to Austin FC 2. They also signed a Spanish fullback named Ruben Bonachera. Is that his name? Did I get that right? That's off the dome right there.
That's pretty good.
This is a kid. He came up through Villarreal's academy, played for Villarreal C, was the highest level he ever got to there, and then was on loan transferred to Wisla Krakow, which is where one of the new scouts came from. And so this seems to be very much a signing of the Rodolfo Borrell era. Catalan kid who played at the same club where our scout was. I tried to find some footage of him, and I found one game online from Villarreal C last year, but I don't know how to gauge that against anything we've seen. So I think the better thing to do will just be to wait for these first games and see how he looks with the guys that we do know.
Yeah, it should be exciting. The profile of player, it seems like the FC2 team this year is a little bit different than before. And it'll be interesting to see how it all fits together.
All right. Anything else, Jeremiah?
No, let's wrap it up.
All right. Before we finish, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on Twitter at LViajero87 and jbentley_ATX. Check out the Patreon. Check out Phil West Substack, verdeallday.substack.com. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with a review of the St. Louis match and a preview of the Philadelphia Union match, and then we'll cover whatever else happens between now and then. Till then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente. Oh my God.